Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. When Rabbi Sam Berman was still alive, we learned so much about the contribution that the Jewish people made to this country. He was very well versed in the stories of the Jewish influence, and I guess influence is the best word, during the American Revolution, and some of the things that the founding fathers were actually quoting from that could be traced back to the Torah. Hope I'm saying everything right here. Rabbi Berman used to be a great source of information for us. We have another rabbi on the phone. He's going to teach us about something else that the Jewish people did, this time in Asia, in the Far East. Isn't that amazing? It's just amazing. I don't understand the whole thing with the world versus the Jewish people. It just doesn't make sense to me. Rabbi Marvin Tokayer, is that right, Robin? Tokayer served as a U.S. Air Force chaplain and became the rabbi of the Jewish community of Japan. He's vice president of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Southeast Asia and the Far East. He's a delegate to the World Conference of Religion and Peace, and he's a contributor to the PBS documentary Sugihara, A Conspiracy of Kindness. Oh, I love that. Pepper, Silk, and Ivory is the title of his book, Amazing Stories About Jews in the Far East. Good morning, Rabbi Tokayer. Am I saying your name right?
You're the first one to get it right, and thank you very much, and nice to hear your voice.
And nice to hear yours. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Great Neck, New York. That's on Long Island.
Great Neck. I know Great Neck. I grew up in Merrick.
Well, we were neighbors.
We were neighbors. That's a lot of Jewish people on Long Island. That's where I went to all my bar mitzvahs. Not too many in Ocala, but, well, that I've gone to anyway. Well, thank you for being on the air with us. So how much time did you spend in Japan and in Asia in general?
Over 10 years, although I visited about 30 times since I left there. I visit every year. But I lived there for over 10 years. Our children were made in Japan for export.
So how is it? I mean, this is probably an off-the-topic, kind of a question, just for a quick one. But the Jewish people are even... they even have difficulties in the Middle East where they started. What is with the world and the Jewish people? Why is there such anti-Semitic sentiments everywhere?
Okay, I'll tell you the way I see it, and I learned this actually in the Orient. We as Jews have problems with our daughter religions, Christians and Muslims, now much more so with Muslims. Both of them have a concept of a monopoly on the truth. There's no salvation outside the church, or there's no salvation outside of Mecca or the Quran. And so we are a bone in their throat. However, when we live with Hindus, Buddhists, Taoists, Shintoists, Confucians, etc., there's no such concept. You have your way, I have my way. My way is very good for me. Your way is very good for you. Why can't we be good neighbors and be of help to each other? We can live with that very well, without anybody hitting anybody on the head. We are not missionaries. Christians are missionaries. Muslims are missionaries because they have the only truth. They have salvation in their back pockets. And so we lived very well in the Orient without ever a trace of anti-Semitism. If you were to ask that question in India, they wouldn't know what you're talking about because the word is not in their lexicon. They never heard of it. They don't know what it means. Just be a nice fellow, be a decent fellow. Good for you, good for me. And we contributed a great deal there, and they appreciated us there, still do, because we were good neighbors.
Yeah, well, that rings true, doesn't it? I've often thought that the stories in the Bible are to teach us about God, not to give us any exclusive on God. And that's how I understood the American Indians, who didn't have exposure to any of the religions that we commonly know. Yeah.
But, there's a common phrase, there's no salvation outside the church. It's not a nice term, but it means that you're either in the church or out of the church. I mean, Hitler, who was baptized, goes to heaven. I was not baptized, I go to hell. That's a tough concept for a Jew to understand.
Yeah,
but but anyway,
and it also sounds like God is less merciful than I would be, which is crazy. God would be more merciful than me, not less.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it's not a God.
Yeah.
And what is really disconcerting now is that Larry had in his news about a week and a half ago that the chancellor in Germany is making a plea to the German people to accept the Jewish people. What kind of unrest is going there now?
Well, there's now upheaval in the world. Muslims are now a major, major number in Europe. Europe was a Christian continent. It's becoming now a Muslim continent, unfriendly to Jews. The Europeans don't know really how to deal with that. And I don't know. I fear for the future. And there's a large Muslim undercurrent or population now there, and there are vestiges of the Nazi mentality, which was quiet because of the Holocaust, but that generation has now passed. The war has been over since 1945. It's now 50 years later plus.
Yeah.
And so what was dormant and quiet is now coming out again.
Well, let's talk about the other side of the planet. That's where
that's a nicer part. and the future. The future is there, incidentally. There's no future in the Ukraine. There's no future in Norway. The future is in India. The future is in China. The future is in Japan. The future is in Vietnam. And we really have to look east because they're now a rising star.
And you know what?
They're the future, not the past.
And I heard that the Chinese now own the Waldorf Astoria in New York City.
They did buy it.
Yeah.
They did buy it.
And
the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, on Fifth Avenue, right by Central Park, now belongs to the Taj Mahal group of hotels. So that's now an Indian hotel.
Oh, really? Really?
So you can see where the money is, and you can see where the future is.
I wonder why that is. Tell me about the title of the book. Maybe that helps explain it, because those are the exports of the area, right? Pepper, silk, and ivory?
Pepper is the pepper on your table, which you use for your cooking and for your, pleasant spice. The Wall Street has the stock exchange, but the International Pepper Exchange, even today, is found on a street called Synagogue Lane and found in a village called Jewtown, which is a highly respectable term, in southern India. And so pepper comes from India. Silk comes from China. And maybe the best ivory carvings come from Japan. So basically the book deals with China, Japan, and India. And that's why I coined the phrase pepper, silk, and ivory.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So in your work with the Air Force, you were you were stationed in Japan?
Actually, the Air Force has airplanes. I was stationed in southern Japan, about 1,000 miles southwest of Tokyo, on the southernmost island, near Nagasaki, actually. And I had coverage, so namely that I was supposed to go to Korea and to the Philippines and to Okinawa and Vietnam, etc. And I covered a circuit for the Air Force, covering the various different bases, as well as the Marines and the Coast Guard, which are also there. And so I was a Jewish chaplain. An Army Jewish chaplain sits put, but an Air Force Jewish chaplain flies the circuit. And so I was flying the circuit of the Far East.
Oh, wow.
And were you accepted in the different cultures that you were at?
When you're in the military, you deal primarily with the military.
Oh.
And so I dealt with American soldiers who were stationed in Okinawa, or stationed in Korea, or stationed in Japan, or stationed in Vietnam, etc. I really had very, very little contact outside of the military. My responsibility was for dealing with the needs of the American military that were stationed in the Far East.
And did those needs also include people that weren't Jewish?
No.
Oh,
Basically,
okay.
I was responsible for Jewish personnel in the American military.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If necessary, you were chaplain to everyone, but primarily you were to Jewish personnel in the American military.
Yeah, yeah.
And generally it was the armed forces outside of the Army, namely the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard.
Rabbi, we need to take a little break for the weather, but I want to make sure we are fair to the book when we come back. I want to hear some of the stories or the thumbnail sketch of some of the stories that are in the book. We'll be right back with Rabbi Marvin Tokayer.
It's brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Mostly sunny today with a high of 82 to 87. Then partly cloudy tonight, a low of 62 to 69. Clouds and some sunshine tomorrow, a shower or thunderstorm in spots in the afternoon, the high 83 to 86. And then on Wednesday, intervals of clouds and sunshine with a high of 81 to 85 degrees. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Evan Duffy.
Whether you're building it up or knocking it down, get it done, rent it now. Sunbelt Rentals is here to make your job a little easier. Our knowledgeable staff will help you find the right equipment for any job, big or small. Did you know that Sunbelt Rentals carries heaters, air conditioners, generators, lighting, traffic control, and so much more? So whether you're building it up or knocking it down, we've got the equipment you need. Get it done, rent it now. And right now, for a limited time, you can have it for less. Just by mentioning this ad, if you rent it Friday afternoon, you can keep it the whole weekend and only pay for one day. But this is a limited time offer, so stop into Sunbelt Rentals today, Northwest 27th, just a quarter mile east of I-75. For more information, just give us a call, 352-369-9101. 352-369-9101. Sunbelt Rentals. Get it done, rent it now. 352-369-9101.
Your home is safe, or is it? AA Lock, Dock, and Security. The name has been a staple in Ocala since 1985. Do you have the right equipment in place to have peace of mind when you are at home or away? AA Lock, Dock, and Security has the right people to install and monitor your home or business. Call today for a free on-site security analysis. Call 867-1965. AA Lock, Dock, and Security, 219 Northwest 10th Street, 867-1965.
Who would you feed if you had 50 chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A? WOCA and Chick-fil-A in the Paddock Mall have teamed up to reward one organization with 50 chicken sandwiches as a way of saying thanks for the great work that organization is doing in our community. And we need your help. See, there are so many great people doing great things that we need nominations. You can nominate your own organization or any organization you choose. Simply send an email to WOCA@WOCA.com. And in 350 words or less, tell us why the organization you are nominating should receive 50 free chicken sandwiches from WOCA and Chick-fil-A at the Paddock Mall. We'll review your nominations and then select one deserving organization each month. We'll announce the winner and even read the winning entry on the air. Make sure to include the contact name and phone number of the organization that you are nominating. And thanks from your friends at WOCA and Chick-fil-A in the Paddock Mall.
All right, 12 minutes before 11 o'clock, Rabbi Marvin Tokayer is on the phone. His book is called Pepper, Silk, and Ivory, Amazing Stories About Jews and the Far East. And I want to be sure we're fair to the book. We've kind of been just chatting, really. We haven't really done our job and focused on the book, but it's just always interesting. So, Rabbi, tell me about some of the stories. Let's see, there's a guy named Two Gun Cohen. Who's Two Gun Cohen?
Okay, Two Gun Cohen was a juvenile delinquent in London. Actually was assigned by the police and the court system of London to a reform school. Met a great teacher, and the right teacher with the right student at the right time can really do wonders. Cohen was tall, was handsome, was powerful, was a petty thief. He was arrested already at the age of 5 for being a pickpocket and stealing from the docks of London. He had some mental problems, which no one knew at that time. Anyway, he was when he served his time at the reform school, was sent off to Canada to find his way because he had no future in England because he already had a criminal record and he could not get a position. He was.
And when was this? What year?
We're talking about the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Okay.
And worked as a farmer, worked as a cowboy in Western Canada, and noticed that there was a disenfranchised people there who had no justice, were taken advantage of. And they were the overseas Chinese who were panning for gold, had the luncheonettes, helping build the railroad. And if anybody needed money to pay their rent and because they lost their money drinking or with gambling or prostitution, you go over to a Chinese, smack him in the face, take his wallet. Nobody would say anything. Every Chinatown, you should know, in Canada and America, every Chinatown was burnt to the ground. And not once was anyone ever prosecuted. They were not second-class citizens, they were fifth-class citizens.
Really?
Cohen identified with them. He was from a people that was not liked, that was persecuted, he was also disadvantaged, and he identified with them. And if he saw you taking advantage of a Chinese, he would leave you for dead in the streets because he had powerful fists. The Chinese couldn't believe that there was a foreigner, a white person, who identified with them. And once he walked into a luncheonette on a Sunday, a Chinese luncheonette, on a Sunday, during an armed robbery, where the money was already taken out of the cash register. The wallet of the Chinese proprietor was already taken. His watch was taken. The gun was out. And the thief was trying to get the ring off the Chinese finger and couldn't get the ring off because we get the ring when we were younger and it didn't come off, and didn't realize that someone walked into the luncheonette. Cohen came in behind him, smacked him in the face, knocked him out cold, dragged him outside, took the wallet, took the money, took the watch, gave it back to the Chinese, and walked out. Well, instantly, all the Chinese in Western Canada knew that there was one person that identified with them and would risk his life to help a Chinese. They communicated with this young revolutionary called Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who would become the George Washington and Abraham Lincoln of China. He becomes the first president of the Republic of China and introduced this Morris Abraham Cohen to Sun Yat-sen. And Sun Yat-sen asked him to come to China to help overthrow the corrupt last of the Qing dynasties of the emperors and produce a free democratic progressive China. Cohen did go there, became the personal bodyguard of Sun Yat-sen and saved his life twice, was wounded twice also. Sun Yat-sen asked him if he had a gun. He pulled out two. He was ambidextrous. He said, oh, you're two-gun Cohen, and that becomes his name.
Oh, that is great.
He becomes a general in the Chinese army. He creates their intelligence network. He helps produce money for them when he worked in their treasury department. He built the railroads that connected city to city within China. He told them Japan would be their future enemy and to prepare themselves. He trained their army, and surprisingly, he had to smuggle weapons into China to help these young revolutionaries produce the Republic of China. And all the weapons were marked in large letters, Singer sewing machines, so that when they arrived in China, don't throw that box that has hand grenades in it or whatever.
Oh, wow.
To this day, in the communist Chinese army, although they don't know it, the word they use for a submachine gun is Singer. And they don't know why they call it Singer.
Oh, wow.
But it all goes back to two-gun Cohen. He was so loved and respected and honored there because he gave his life for the Chinese people and for the Chinese cause. When there were two Chinas, when Mao Zedong of Communist China was fighting with Chiang Kai-shek of Republican China, of Free China, and the two of them were at war with each other, never appeared civilly. Both Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek say we're number two. Sun Yat-sen was number one. He's the founder of Free China. When Cohen died, and he died and was buried in Manchester in England, Mao Zedong said, we will attend that funeral. Chiang Kai-shek said, we will attend that funeral. The two Chinas never appeared together civilly without shooting at each other. The planes of the two countries could never be at the airport at the same time. Nevertheless, both Chinas appeared respectfully, honorably, and civilly at the Jewish funeral of General Morris Abraham Cohen, two-gun Cohen. And on his tombstone, on his historic tombstone, which is written in Hebrew and written in English, it's also written in Chinese, signed by the Vice Premier of the People's Republic of China, honoring one of the heroes of China. And we never heard of him.
That is such an amazing story.
Yeah, that should be in our history books.
Wow,
That's correct.
So, did you discover that in the course of writing this book, or was this just something you learned because you spent so much time over there?
Well, I spent so much time there and knew so many. He died in the 1970s. I lived in the Far East at that time.
Okay.
And I knew many people who were friends of his in China.
Wow.
Who, he always went Friday night to a Jewish home because he wanted to have the matzo ball soup or whatever the Jewish food they were serving. He loved that stuff. And I met so many, still know many, who remember him. I met his family. I met his relative, met his nephews, got his photographs. And actually, you lived in Merrick, but in Roslyn, which is next to where I live, the next village, Madame Chiang Kai-shek lived there. She died there. I know her.
Right?
And she remembered him very well.
Wow. Well, this is the book to get. This is the book. I just want the listeners to know what you're referring to for those who just tuned in. The book is written by Rabbi Marvin Tokayer, who you're listening to. The book he wrote is called Pepper, Silk, and Ivory. Amazing stories about Jews in the Far East, and that was one of them, and probably the only one we're going to have time to actually give that much detail from. Are you the sole writer of the book, or is there a co-writer?
I have a co-author who traveled with me actually to the Far East because I led tours to China, Japan, and India, and she traveled with me to India. Was listening to the stories about India when we were in India, and said that you have to write this down. I said, I'm not a writer. I'm more of a rabbi and a talker. She said, I will help you. She was a writer for the New York Times, and we wrote it together.
Oh, wow.
And she wrote a masterpiece.
And she works for NBC? Is this going to be made into a film of some sort?
The book just came out, so it's too
we don't know. We don't know yet. Wow, that's exciting
I hope
stuff.
so, but I don't. But there are 23 chapters, and each chapter is independent, different location, different story, different event, and we should know all of them.
The book is called Pepper, Silk, and Ivory. Before we run out of time, do you have a website?
Yes, there is a website called Pepper, Silk, and Ivory. www.peppersilkandivory.com.
Peppersilkandivory.com.
When you were doing the story with her, and then sometimes you might have had to go do research and speak to real people, were you able? You must have been able to gain their trust to find out the rest of the stories for you to write about.
I knew all of these people. I lived with them, and I lived with them when I lived in the Far East, and since returning to America, after our tour of duty there, you might say, I've gone back there every year. So I've been to China 30 times.
Well, it seems
there many times.
Is Rabbi Tokayer mentioned in the book? Because it sounds like he made a contribution to the Far East.
Well, I don't know if I'm mentioned by name in the book, but you'll see all of my friends and acquaintances who provided me with an abundance of information. And they were so anxious to talk to me because these are such important events, and it's not recorded anywhere.
Wow.
We're always blinded by the West. We should start looking east.
The way that the Christian churches are going, it seems that they're losing a lot of their members and they're falling away, but it seems like the Jewish community is growing.
That's a good question. You have to ask someone who deals with demography. I don't know if we're growing or not growing, but we are eternal, and all good people are eternal.
Wow. And we do hear about the Middle East more than, and of course, America, for the Jewish people more than we do the Far East. This is an amazing book. The website I went to, peppersilkandivory.com, indicates that if we buy a book right now, you'll sign it. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. At no profit. I will sign it, and I will mail it to you with a personal note.
All right. And did you hang out with Ellen Rodman, or was she apart from you as you did all the research? Or did you travel together?
We only traveled together when we were in India for 12 days. But we did meet very frequently, usually once a week, and reviewed the outline of each chapter. I gave her all the information, and she really wrote a masterpiece with it.
Well, thank you, Rabbi, for being on the air with us today. We're out of time, but I want the listeners to go to the website, peppersilkandivory.com. That's the name of the book. I'm guessing you can get it on Amazon, but if you go to the website, you can get a signed copy, so it's even better.
That is correct.
Wow.
That is correct.
We will share this information with the folks that we know in town that would be interested, especially Rabbi Hecht.
Yes.
See if Rabbi Hecht will
Please convey my regards.
Thank you, Rabbi, and stay warm this winter. We'll
I will try to do so. Call when you come back to your roots. Give me a call.
I'll do that. Thank you for the offer. All right, we'll be right back.
Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. Texas health officials say 120 people are still being monitored for Ebola symptoms. Those who may have had contact with one of 3 Ebola patients. Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings defending the city's response.
There have been some missteps, and we've talked about those things. Dallas is strong, and the Presbyterian Hospital is strong.
Dozens of people who had close contact with Thomas Duncan, the Ebola patient who died, have been released from quarantine. Forensic tests still being done to determine if remains found near Charlottesville, Virginia, are those of missing student Hannah Graham.
This isn't the first body police have found in this area. They also found the body of Morgan Harrington about 5 years ago, and we know that her case has been forensically linked to Jesse Matthew, with the same suspect in the abduction of Hannah Graham.
Fox's Leland Vittert. More bomb attacks in Iraq. A triple car bombing killing 16 in the city of Karbala, and a bombing at a Shiite mosque killing at least 17 in Baghdad. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You use the motor oil Dad used, and he uses what Granddad used, yet no one uses what Great-Granddad used, because whale oil is illegal. But if oil's what you need, Napa has you covered. With Castrol GTX for only $3.79 a quart, or 5 quarts in a Napa Silver filter for just $21.99. No harpoons needed. Conquer the job with Napa Know-How. General states pricing. Sales prices do not include applicable state, local taxes, or recycling fees. At participating Napa Auto Parts stores. Offer expires 11/16/14.
Hey neighbor, did you know LED bulbs save energy and can last for over 20 years? It's true. So stop by your neighborhood Ace to stock up and save on the best bulbs for the best price. Get dimmable LED 60-watt equivalent bulbs by Fight for just $5.99 after $2 instant savings with Ace Rewards card. So you can save today and tomorrow. Now through October 31st at participating stores. Store stock only. See store for details.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
It's time for Farm and Ranch headlines on the Southeast AgNet. I'm Tyron Spearman reporting. USDA's Ag Statistics Service reports this week that the harvest is about 33% finished nationwide on peanuts. Peanut conditions 5% very poor, 12% poor, 27 fair, 47 good, and 9% excellent. In Georgia, the Ag Statistics Service says Georgia is 52% dug as of Monday, harvested at 32%. And right now, the conditions are 6% very poor, 16% poor, mostly on dryland peanuts, 28 fair, 40% good, and 10% excellent. In Alabama, they report 65% of their crop has been dug as of last Friday. 35% has been combined. They said that the area farmers are working hard on picking peanuts and picking cotton as well. The lack of rain has caused peanut digging to be very difficult with the hard ground. Peanut yields are favorable, they said, more than they thought at first. In Florida, they say they're 50% through as of last week. Normally they're at 59, so they're slower than normal. Drier weather made a good field work conditions last week, and peanut harvest continued real fast in the Panhandle and North and Central Florida. But everyone's trying to get the peanuts in before the end of the October so that they can make sure they've got these peanuts ready to go for the consumers around the world.
Cotton Incorporated and the Plant Management Network have teamed up to give growers and crop consultants a new and freely accessible resource to focus on this year. Focus on Cotton is a series of monthly webcasts from industry experts offering practical information and guidance in various areas of crop management, including weeds, nutrients, irrigation, diseases, and insects. Focus on Cotton is available for viewing at www.plantmanagementnetwork.org/FOCO. The Cotton Board and Cotton Incorporated, increasing the demand for and profitability of cotton.
I'm Tyron Spearman for Southeast AgNet.
Legally Yours, brought to you by Fuller & Fuller Attorneys at Law. On the air every Wednesday morning at 10:30 a.m. with John Fuller, a board-certified civil trial lawyer for over 25 years. John welcomes your questions from